Fishbourne looked like before the Romans got there, but using a take that, anyway, don't worry about it. I did promise. We've got something very special. Most of the images you're going to see tonight, you're not going to get anywhere else because we've gone overboard. Right. So talking about going overboard, Roger, not really interested in anything you've got to say. Right. So, Margaret.
No, I've got no news this week.
Oh, actually, we are curious about what Roger's got to say. Go on, Rog, tell us.
No, it's fine. I'm just going to carry on now.
You taking it personal, have you, Rog?
Quietly, and
No, it's not. It's not. It don't work out like that, Rog. Really don't. Right, David.
No, thank you.
Good.
Oh.
But talking about alfalfa, right, Andy?
Yeah, funnily enough, I did come across something. I was trawling through the documentary programs the other day, trying to find something interesting to watch on iPlayer, BBC iPlayer, and came across this one called The Desert Kites, which I would recommend.
Hang on, I've heard of that. What is it? Tell us.
Yeah, I was just going to say, does anybody else know about it before I even already mentioned it? No, right.
No.
Right.
Hang on. Before you say anything, I think Drina mentioned something about this, but carry on.
Okay. It's Saudi Arabia, basically, or that's what they originally thought. In the 1930s, mainly the RAF took aerial photographs of these markings on the desert floor, a bit like the NASCAR lines, except bigger and a lot more of them. They thought there were a couple of hundred of them, but they weren't able to do much about it because it's a kind of, it's been a no-go area for quite a long time, Saudi Arabia, for anyone other than Saudis. And also flying over and photography, aerial photography wasn't easy. So satellite photography suddenly made it possible, except there's 6,500 of them. And so they went and did some exploratory work on them and mapping them and things, and did a dig on one of them to try and find out the age, because they didn't think they were that old, to discover that they were 7,000 BCE, making them the biggest structures in the world, and the biggest structures in the world, predating the pyramids and Stonehenge and everything else. Really, really interesting. And they found more up in, I think it was Kazakhstan and somewhere else. They're spread out throughout the Middle East, mainly in Saudi Arabia. But they are kind of they worked out that they are low walls to catch. They look like, if I said a banjo enclosure, right, they look a bit like that, but they've got a wedge going into them. And so they go into it, and then they've got an enclosure at the end with little circular bits on the outside. With what they didn't know, they discovered that those circular bits on the outside were pits, right? And they worked out that they're obviously for corralling animals, but they didn't know, is that for domesticated animals or wild animals? And after a little bit more research, they worked out it was wild animals, but they didn't know which ones, because they found no evidence anywhere of anything. But they found from some in Jordan some drawings on a cliff face, a design of one of these enclosures with animals running in with horns. So they knew that they weren't cattle as such, because they've got long sticky balls. That's exactly what they turned out to be, because eventually they found a dwelling near one of them with hundreds of gazelle bones in it. So they worked out that, and they're thinking, but gazelles, and if anybody knows gazelles are really agile and can jump over low walls very, very easily. They can jump like 10 feet in the air without any difficulty whatsoever. Thinking, so why did they build them like that? But apparently gazelles follow lines. So if they see a line, they'll follow it without jumping over it. So these wild gazelles, hundreds of them, got funneled into these things. And when they got into the enclosure bit at the end, where the circular bit was, they excavated one and discovered that they were pits, that they were just on their eye line, so they, with a short wall above it, so that they couldn't see the pit. So they would jump over it thinking they were getting out and into the pit and be captured. And that's what it was. And there are literally thousands of these things.
Really?
But worth a watch. So it's called the Desert Kites, as in flying a kite, because they look like kites from the air. So that's what they call them.
Oh, okay.
Is that the same as off your kite?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, fair enough. Yeah. No, that's cool. Brilliant. Excellent. Loving it. Excellent. That was really good. Really good. So yeah, cool. I don't know what to say about that. Saudi Arabia, eh? Roger.
Well,
Rog.
nothing for me.
Before no, yeah, I think we had already done him. Yeah. Anne.
No, I'm going. Thank you.
And Judith.
No, sorry.
Judith, we'll have the book sent up to you very soon, tied around a brick. So if the postman turns up and chucks it at the house, you go through the window, job done, you get it quicker. Right. Okay. So weird, strangely this week, I clicked on something and there was a bit of news, and then there was a bit of news on the TV, and then there was something else, and then there was this. I've got 7 items of news this week. I think most of it is Roman, which is a bit weird. Michelle was sitting down and she said, "You heard about this?" Yeah, I have. I looked at this. That was great. So this takes us to Bulgaria, I think, and we go to somewhere else, and we go to the Bay of Naples, and we go to Great Britain as well, Aldborough. So we got that stuff. We got stuff about the Thracians, and we got stuff about Plato, and we got some neat reconstructed drawings of what we feel Fishbourne Roman Palace would have looked like before the Romans built their palace. So that you've not seen this before. This is our own stuff. I gotta say, this is mine and Alex's, whatever. Alex is my agent. She's really brilliant. And yes, I won't say any more about that because we'll get into the acting and so on. And Michelle's dragged me to see Downton Abbey 3 tomorrow. So let's get into it. And I think what we might do is look at some images of Fishbourne Palace as we think they look like now, and maybe your mindsets are going to go into thinking, actually, how different is the Roman stuff from what maybe the stuff may have been like at Fishbourne. If the Romans hadn't invaded Britain, there would have been still mosaics there, blah blah blah. So that's what we're going to do. You've missed this sort of take, Andy, but we mentioned this, and I promised that this week that's what we'll do. But then I realized, I thought, right, I want to look at a bit of Sparta this week. I want to look at the Scythians, and I thought that the Thracians were enough, and that was it. Thracian warriors, Roger. It's enough to make your eyes curdle. So, and Thracian men, definitely for Anne. So let's crack on.
Oh.
So we got a bit for everybody tonight. Can't be bothered to satisfy Judith, but that's another thing altogether.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Aldborough, York, that'll do, Judith. So right, okay. So there we are, and we should go straight to images. And look at those Thracian warriors, Rog. Love it. You're not going to get that anywhere. That's our work today. But so what we've got is, get rid of that there. What the hell is that? Right, okay. So thinking about Fishbourne Roman Palace, I know some of you have been there, and we're straight down into it. And one of the things about Fishbourne Roman Palace is this sort of this take on, it was one of a number of palaces, not a number, there was probably half a dozen in Britain, but these huge complexes with hypercourse systems, with dining rooms, with accommodation, with gardens, you name it, it was there, right? And this was the idea of Roman Britain, and Fishbourne Palace was that idea of Roman Britain. But the one thing that I've been trying to get across is that the idea of Roman Britain would have happened if the Romans had never turned up anyway, and that's one of the points. This is just this. I keep putting this theme through, even without looking in depth about Roman structures in Britain. This is where I'm leading your minds to, and this is where we're thinking, and this is why we're doing all these other things. Oh, that's right. We got helmet today that's been found in the sea at Sicily, associated with the Carthaginian from the First Punic War. Love it. So that's an underwater find. So we got that as well tonight. So one of the one of and the other thing of the stuff with Aldborough is really exciting, is because what they're saying at Aldborough is there wasn't a Dark Ages in Britain at all. Their Roman civilization never collapsed in Britain. My God, archaeologists are accepting stuff that I've been saying. So it's so good that the news is starting to come that way, and it's exciting times in regards to the Roman archaeology. It's been exciting times in regards to Roman archaeology for quite a few years, with lots of things being found in Britain. Now, so we're looking at this and we're thinking, right, how does this work? This is the Place de Resistance of Fishbourne Roman Palace. We've got another site at Woodchester, which has got great mosaics that have been found underneath the cemetery there as well. Fishbourne, Chichester, South Coast. This is where we are, and this would have been a great palace associated with Verica and other famous figures names that we've mentioned. But we will look into that, and we will get straight into that. When we did the coin stuff, we mentioned Verica and Togodumnus and all these other figures. Now, what we're seeing again, we're looking at that now. How could we take a skip and a jump and think that Verica and all those other people associated with the Atrebates and so on in the south, and all that sort of sense of what was going on, how were they able to do it without a Roman invasion, without this sort of Roman takeover? They were doing this before AD 43. All these interesting things. So again, the other thing as well is we didn't know that Fishbourne existed until after the 1950s. We had no idea of what was there. It was only found because somebody put a post in the ground, and they looked into the ground and actually, oh my God, there's bits of weird tessera in there. What's that doing in there? And this is where we're going. So again, that sort of idea. And I thought, right, let's see what we can do with the reconstruction, right? So this is what I wanted to do, right? Is sort of show an idea of reconstruction. And so we've got all these images, all these things to look at, right? And let's just there. Now, maybe this may look a little bit medieval, but it's not. Maybe we could be thinking of something really similar to this at Fishbourne. Big buildings, smaller buildings, some with mosaics in, and this is the way things were going. So the point is with this and the reconstruction there, the point is with all of this, and it may look a little bit medieval, but what we're doing, we're sort of getting into the structural buildings, and we're thinking we do have evidence for this in Iron Age Britain now. We do have evidence for big hall buildings. We've got evidence of porches. We've got evidence of this type of thing going on in Britain way before the Romans. So we're just thinking, right, oh, hang on a minute, the Romans came over and they did this and that. Everyone was living in round houses. Not exactly true. It's really not. So we come and we look at, we're thinking about this reconstruction, and we're thinking about big halls, sort of outlying buildings, and maybe in there you could think about mosaic, and you could think about this type of structure. So when me and Alex were working on this, we thought, right, what we're going to do, if we're going to go with the reconstruction, we've got to have a stone base, because that's a bit of a revolutionary thing on the south coast. But this was like a stone base with flint nodules and small pebbles and stuff, because we don't have the usual rock that we have, say, in South Wales or say in Cumbria, where we've got nice bits of limestone, or we've got nice sandstone where Judith is in regards to the likes of Yorkshire. But down on the south coast, they're using rubble and flint nodules and all that type of stuff. So again, what we're doing, we're seeing this sort of template of a stone template, and what we're then doing is that we're moving inside and we're using beams and these easily constructed structures, and sort of a drain line sort of sense of outside the stone wall itself having the ability for a sense of drainage. So this is the thing. So we're starting to think about very civilized worlds growing. And if you were watching closely last week, when we looked at some material in regards to Opidia, the oppidums of Britain. So you got oppidium, the likes of Killyvratbatum, and you've got oppidum like in Stanwick, and you've got oppidum like at Colchester, Camalodunum. And you're thinking oppidiums are early forms of towns that were developing in Britain in the later part of the Iron Age. We're talking about the time of the birth of Christ. So moving on to the next illustration. And what we did here, we sort of looked at something like this. And the very interesting thing that we're seeing here is this thing of trenches where you're putting beams in and you're hammering the beams in to the ground. So you've got these slit trenches where you're putting big beams in, and then that would support the structure. So instead of having a stone base, and this is the way that we're going to be building throughout the Roman era, starting in the Iron Age, throughout the Roman era, and then we go into the period of the early medieval. And this is the way we're going to be building for quite some time in Britain. So the way that we're building like this, and the way that this is being portrayed, is more on the raison d'etre of being a building style that's being introduced by people who are already here. Not a building style that's been introduced by the Romans, but a building style that we are evolving ourselves. And this is a really important point. So there's no reason, and we've got the evidence at Fishbourne, there's no reason why we can't have mosaics in those buildings. The idea that we're aspiring to be like the Roman Empire. This is why we looked at Welwyn Garden. This is why we looked at the evidence at Welwyn Garden. And I can't remember when we're doing all this in my presentations, whether that was last week or the week before. But when we looked at Welwyn Garden, we were discussing the issue of going into death with amphora, going into death with various artifacts that are being imported in. So we're not being buried with the things that we're familiar with. We're being buried with Samian ware plates in Britain. Why would you be buried with Samian ware plates and amphora in Britain and silver goblets with nice handles either side and all these things when this is a different world? But we're aspiring to go into the afterlife with these objects. And with those objects, we're going into a new afterlife, not the afterlife of the average, everyday Iron Age people around. It's that Coca-Cola moment. Are we going to be buried with a bottle of ale, or are we going to be buried with a bottle of Coca-Cola? And again, thinking about something more sort of, and what this thing at the background, what you've got sort of what might be a palisade around the outside behind these buildings. And again, these do look very sort of early medieval looking, but we've got evidence of this at Killyvratbatum. We've got little tantalizing bits of evidence at Fishbourne, before AD 43. And you know, one of the great massive obsessions that I've got is about Caligula, right? I'm convinced that Caligula did invade Britain. And it's a bit like a King Arthur thing, but there's no evidence to say that he did. But there's no evidence to say Julius Caesar invaded Britain either. There's more. So all these different things. It's like having our mind thinking and sort of going, understanding what the Roman world is about. And things like the damnatio memoriae. If the Romans weren't happy with something, they would banish that information. They would destroy that information. And this is to shape the narrative in our own form. That's why I started tonight saying, look, you know, we're censoring what parts of history that we show, even as close as the Second World War. And this is the danger. So when we look at the Roman era, it's more like understanding that things have altered in the past and things have changed, and it's that sort of textualization of the evidence that we need to really understand. So I've got to be honest with you, you're not going to see this anywhere, right? We've designed this today, and look at that. So when I said, right, you know, let's put some windows in there, right? We've seen earlier illustrations, and we're looking at this, and we're saying we're looking at, say, for example, the trench going around the outside, and we're thinking about number 2. So you'd have an arrangement of post holes in there. I think the numbering's about a bit wrong. And what you've got is you might have a stone base as you've got with the building behind, and you've got these you've got timbers resting on the stone base, right? So where you've got the number 2, the other number 2, not the first number 2, the other number 2, that's the stone wall. And what you're going to do is you're going to have wood resting on the stone. And I think what we've done with number 3 is just to basically show that there would be resting pads, maybe to support the floor beam level. So that was just an idea. And one of this idea that we got a drainage gully around the outside of these buildings, which is a typical Iron Age straight where you've got ditches around structures. That's for drainage. It's quite as simple as that. So there's no reason why you can't bring this technology into the idea of this Iron Age technology, which is adapting and revolutionarily changing to moving to this new sort of sense of the Roman world coming to us. And so again, we've got these images, and sort of we got that there. So Fishbourne Roman Palace, sort of when it says early Iron Age, it should be saying later Iron Age reconstruction. And we decided to put this into a bit of a teaching pack as well. And again, so this is very different from what you would usually associate with the Iron Age, circular buildings. This is now what we're looking at with the Iron Age. Things are very, very different, how we understand the Iron Age. And again, suggesting growth buildings, and the mosaic, and sort of aspiring to be what is going on in the continent is one of those takes of how this world's developing before AD 43, or before the likes of AD 39, that date AD 39 Caligula. Interesting. And again, we've seen this again, sort of this floating world. And yes, we do, again, repeating that, we do get big buildings that we're actually seeing in the archaeology. We really, really are. Again, we've seen this, a bit more of this. And sort of one of the things that we need to say when we're looking again at this is that you've got these sleeper trenches around the outside, whether you're putting stone in them, whether it's dry stone or there's mortar, or whether the sleeper trenches, they actually put these really heavy timbers in. So this is one great way to build. So you fell a tree, you split it, you put that in the trenches, and you build a structure from it. Perfect, easy way of building. And this is what we're seeing. The caveat in regards to these when in archaeology, what I can remember doing this at Cosmester Medieval Village when I was 10 years old, excavating in 1985. Somebody say, you see that staining in the ground? Yeah, that staining in the ground indicates that there was a timber in there, and that staining in the ground, that timber itself was used to support the rest of the structure, because it was quite a big timber. And this is what we're talking about. So if you haven't got a stone footing, you have these big trenches, these slot trenches, and you've got these big timbers in, and then you build the rest of the structure from that. Really easy way of building, but strong way of building, except everything rots down eventually. But if you want a building that's going to last 20 years, great way of building. So yeah, look at that. We designed that today, Roman Britain, and just to sort of and also we're thinking of getting that placed onto a fleece as well. So look at that, loving it. So this image hasn't come out the best way I wanted it to. So what I wanted to do is we're going to move there. We're going to move that down, and we got that. So this is one of the news articles that I found this week, and I'm actually quite surprised that when I asked if anyone's got any news tonight, nobody came up with any news. So, which is a bit strange, because I've come up with 7 sets of news, which is brilliant. So and one is Britain's economy did not collapse after the Romans left. We've now got new evidence which has come to light from Alba, just been published really, really recently. So what we've got is this amazing find in Albania, huge, massively interesting find. And what we've got, the first thing I saw was this sort of aerial view of the archaeologist, and I thought, wow, so that one on the left there is what we then find with that there, and it's amazing. It's amazing the level of archaeology that they've actually found. So archaeologists work on Albania's first discovered monumental tomb. Now, we do believe that there has been found examples of similar things to this in Britain, in York, but they don't survive today. But finding something like this in Albania, archaeologists finding this today in Albania, unearthing a significant Roman burial chamber dating possibly sometime around AD 300. And again, this is the first discovery of something like this in a Balkan country, actually. So, you've got Croatia, you've got Albania, you've got Macedonia, Serbia, and so on, Slovenia. Mm. So you're looking at this and you're thinking the detail, you're thinking that these things survived. They are with us. And this was discovered by accident. But most of these wonderful things are discovered by complete accident, usually by farmers or usually by quarrying. So the headline news is of this. The discovery, this was between the North Macedonian border in Albania. And it was locals had come across this, and they basically said, look, there's something over there. So it's likely that they may have been involved in some quarrying or something like that. So we've got these wonderful, finely carved sandstone architecture there, absolutely beautiful. And looking at that there, so he's inside, and you've got a big sarcophagus in there as well. And this is all new stuff. So we haven't got much more than these images. And the tomb measuring this massive tomb, huge tomb. So if we go back to this, the whole length of this is 9 meters long, by 6 meters. It's a big thing. And guess what? Interesting enough, we've got the name of the person buried here. So it's a wealthy individual known as Galliano, because there's an inscription there. And the Galliano was the tomb was dedicated to Jupiter, but the name of the individual resting it is Galliano. And being that this is such an amazing find, and we'll come up with the other tagline in a minute. So local authorities in Albania are planning to develop the site into a tourist attraction, capitalizing on the country's booming tourism. Looking at something like this, putting a building over there, something like this is what we're saying. So this would be absolutely amazing. If this was found in Britain, we'd put a bulldozer through it and we'd blow it up and we wouldn't care about it. But that's British archaeology for you. But the fact of the matter is, Albania is thinking we can make money out of this, and it's amazing. So other finds that they're actually finding in there at the site include a piece of fabric embroidered with gold thread. Yes, that's one of the finds. Fabric embroidered with gold thread. I wish I could show you an image. And listen to this: glass plates, right? Glass plates with knives, right? So this, thinking about this and trying to sort of get to grips with this, and there's more information on this which I'm going to show you. And actually, right? Oh my dearie me! I didn't look at this piece where there's an article out there, right, which is actually got the inscription, which maybe you guys could look at. I just clicked on it, and the information disappeared. But there's there's so much more to this site. There really, really is. There's so much online about this. And I just right, okay. I was just trying to find some more. Okay, there's another piece here which hopefully I can give you some more information. This is not the one. So this mausoleum obviously is a burial place to more than one person. That's where you're going to put the family burials in the mausoleum. And it's Albania itself, the area itself was part of the Roman Empire for at least 600 years. And do you know what, right? I these are the images that I've got. I want to take us on to Google now, because there's some more things to this. So if I type in there's a few more images to this. So archaeology, and we've got Albania, and we've got the tomb. So there we go. Hopefully we'll get this one straight away. So yes, that's good. That's looking good. Right, which one should I click on to? The Smithsonian one. If we can get some more images. Hang on. Oh, go away. Accept. We've seen that one. Right. Okay. Let's just get off a minute. Let's just see if we can find some more. Use me getting excited about this. Images. Some more images, because there's an inscription with some writing on it. There.
What?
Look at that. We've got the name of the person buried there, so we know it's dedicated to Jupiter. And there was another image. Some of these are not. Oh, there we go. That one there. I think this is it. Oh, there we go. I want to show you this one. Right. So, hang on. Oh, hang on. It's gone again. All right, hang on. So, go there. Oh, that's it cleaned out. Hang on, where's it gone? Oh, hang on. Just there. Look at that there. That's it cleaned out. It's you've got this. It's beautifully carved, and obviously you've got all these other artifacts in there. And they found. Hang on, it's not letting me do what I wanted. It's not that one there. Hang on, we just had there. Is it going to show? We've got another inscription there. So we've got all this wonderful stuff being found there, and it's so amazing that this is being found now, and hopefully we could possibly think that more things like this are going to be found, and it's likely that this was a Greek individual who was buried within the Roman world. It's a Greek family, and looking out for these types of things. And let's just see if there's any more information that we can actually glean from this. And let's just see if there's any more in this article. So again, finding small artifacts, there's none of that. But again, we've got that cleaned out, and we've got the size there. Inside, 2.4 meters high. So it was amazing. So with the first inscription, again, first inscription that we've got is then talking about more glass vessels. When it said about a knife, was that a glass knife? I wasn't sure. Bone artifact, weapons, more textile. Obviously, the one with golden thread, and again trying to make this a cultural landmark, which obviously it puts our country to shame now that we do find things that are remotely like this, and we just put bulldozers through them. So what we're going to do now, I'm starting to say that more and more, that we just don't seem to have the care that we used to for our history and archaeology in this country. So again, just flowing through these images again, there it is, and there, and this Aldborough. This is where we're going to go next. And yeah, this was all involving the news this week. Now, interesting enough, when I was reading this, it really hit the mark. And this is published on Friday, the 12th of September, so that was last week. So this really hit the mark. And the headline news with this is Britain's economy did not collapse after the Romans left. Surprise, surprise. And I don't know why we're so obsessed with this lie that we're told in history, that the Romans left Britain in 410. It is a lie. It's completely a lie. And historians and archaeologists still telling that lie are off their heads. You know, I took you to Bird Oswald, guys, and the people were saying the garrison of Bird Oswald was still operational in the 430s with their family. So if the Roman military left, why are they still there? These things, and then when actually finding archaeological evidence like this, researchers examining sediment cores. They've got these sediment cores which they're looking at, and what they're doing now, we're starting to reassess what we've got in 2021, and there it is. We're reassessing. We're doing more geophysical looking, metallurgical looking at the landscape. All these marks here, and it's saying that we've got all this evidence at Aldeburgh. Absolutely amazing. I did this on one of my daily videos that I used to do on the Romans, Aldeburgh in Yorkshire. So what they've got is massive evidence there of metal working beyond 420s, 430s. Things keep going. Things keep going. And the architecture, sanitation, road network, industry continues on. So this is generally now accepted at Aldeburgh that the archaeological evidence that they're finding there is massive industrial activities going all the way up to the end of the 400s. So when we used to say that Roman civilization in the 400s collapsed, no more glass making, no more pottery manufacturing, no more metal working, that's no longer the case. So from Nottingham University, Christopher Lovelock said at Aldeburgh it is possible metal production expanded steadily using the ores and coal fuel of the Roman period. So they're not just keeping things going at Aldeburgh. When the 400s hit, things have increased. Things have got bigger. So that is really awkward for me as an archaeologist to try to put across, because as an archaeologist, I would look at the archaeological evidence at Carinium, and I would say at Carinium, roughly around the 430s, 440s, at Carinium, some kind of outbreak goes through Carinium, like a plague outbreak, and we're seeing evidence of the city just being abandoned. Carinium, Cirencester, Gloucester. We're seeing it being abandoned. So with that, what we then do is then we say, look at the likes of what's going on with Londinium, and look at the likes of what's going on with Canterbury. But then we ignore what's going on in the north, as everybody, even politicians, ignore what's going on in the north. Do you know what I mean? We hear that, don't we? But what's going on in the north is it's very likely that the Roman world is more alive in the north than it is in the south. And it's likely that whatever's happening is not the Angles and the Saxons. Whatever's happening is not tribal people invaded Britain. And this invasion from the Picts and the Scots, how can that be happening when there are functioning towns and cities in the north? You know, you start to see these things as something not adding up. There's really things not adding up. And then you can chuck in King Arthur into the mix, and you can start to think, well, oh, hang on a minute. This King Arthur blokey, you know, what's going on with him? And you put think about all these different things. So all the evidence that they're getting with Aldeburgh and all the samples with the evidence, and you know, all these sort of faint lines there are structural things going on with Aldeburgh. You know, this is what they're coming up with the geophys. Look at the activity. It's all over the place at Aldeburgh, underneath the modern city. So it's a modern town at Aldeburgh, and they're doing all these boreholes. They're getting all this evidence, and they're Another thing I would say, they would go 2025, so it's really, really new. So one of the things that we need to say is that lots, folks, lots of towns and cities were bigger in the Roman era than they are today. Much bigger. Yeah. What we usually say, oh, you look at the Roman remains under Diva, look at the Roman Chester, look at the Roman remains under the likes of Londinium. They're dwarfed by the later stuff. But then the Roman stuff in some areas like Alba, Viraconium, look at Viraconium, Roxeter, it was a huge place, right? And there's nothing there, a few houses there today. So we've got to allow our minds to stray away from the narrative. And sometimes when you get the series Time Team on YouTube, which said that I think they do 3 films a year now of their excavations over 3 days, like Time Team used to do in the past. They're sometimes talking about the type of stuff I'm talking about. So the coring evidence, when you take a core, an auger a core, you pull that out, circular core, and you basically read off. So what they're doing, they're seeing a spike of industrial activity, huge spike of industrial activity at Alba. And what you can see there, there it shows the line of the wall that once went around Alba, found in some of the field patterns today. You can see there that the Roman town is twice the size of what's there today. And then what's around the outside, there was a vicus and more there. So the core evidence that we're actually getting from looking at the archaeology is that this core has provided the first unbroken continuous record and timeline of metal pollution and metal economic history in Britain. And then when we think about it, this is a major production area. And it changes everything that we think. It really, really does. That things just didn't decline, they continued. There was no sudden crash. There was no dark ages. That's the point. Whilst there is no definitive evidence why people talk about this historically, there is obviously something going on in the south. So that there is the north-south divide. That there's the Roman world is still functioning in the north, and this is the evidence that we get from Viraconium. This is the evidence that we get from Carlisle. This is the evidence that we get from Bird Oswald. This is the evidence that we get from Baracum York. This is the evidence that we get from Marlborough. In the south, however, things are collapsing. But what we do in the south, we basically say, look at Britain. Now, after the 415s, 420s, things have fallen apart in the south. So then we say it was the same was happening everywhere else, but it wasn't. So we're judging one part of the country by the rest, which is completely wrong. And so the narrative in the north is very, very different than the narrative in the south. Importantly, these findings prove that there was not a total economic collapse after what we see as the early 400s. Furthermore, following the post-Roman period, the cores display many fluctuations in metalworking, and it's and what we do see is that these findings tell us that things went on, things just continued. So the economic history is very, very different than what the historians are writing. That's the danger when you see like the Bede, when you see Nennius writing, and you talk about Gildas and all these people writing, and they say all these terrible things happening, blah 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 blah. That's the historians saying, but the archaeological evidence is really, really different. It is telling us something else. That was one of the headlines a couple of days ago in one of the media outlets. Dark Ages didn't exist, says bombshell new study that could turn UK history upside down, which is what we're seeing. Things are really, really different. So there were in certain areas in Britain, what we've got is industrial world continuing, and it then strikes something else. So I can no longer say that the Normans brought over the orders like the Benedictines, the Carthusians, the Dominicans. I can't say that though the Normans brought those monastic orders over that re-industrialized Britain, because things continued on. It's just that people are not writing things down as they used to. To be honest with you, folks, be honest with you, there's more writing in the supposed Dark Ages between the 400s and 1066 than in most of the entire of the Roman era and anything before. So it is not a Dark Ages, except we're not seeing things being written about the industry, except in the archaeology it does exist. I was hoping that Andy was going to be on tonight, and he is, because I think this was going to be something for Andy that would really interesting. And then after the break, we've got a bit of Thracians, but I think what we're going to do is we'll go on a little bit longer, and then we've got Cicero's villa being found in the Bay of Naples, a newly deciphered papyrus scroll telling us about Plato's grave, and that rumor of a Roman bathhouse being found at Newport. What's that about? So when I was doing the research for this, I was a little bit upset that I did not get any more images. I was a little bit upset because that's not the shipwreck. I was a little bit upset because this is all I've got, and I just thought, okay, but it's so new this that not a lot has been issued. Extraordinary Roman helmet from scene of ancient sea battle unearthed in Mediterranean. Helmet was likely lost during the Battle of Egades of the year 241 BC. So this would part of the First Punic War against horrible Rome. So the way this reads is as follows. Marine archaeologists have uncovered a rare Roman era helmet from the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. They could have easier said Carthaginian era helmet, but they didn't. So this is probably likely to be a Carthaginian, but it might have been an auxiliary Roman naval person. So lost in the Mediterranean Sea and during the naval battle of 241. Now, what you'd have had, it's likely there may have been some kind of plume attached to there. There's nothing slotting in there, but there may have been something attached, because lots of these helmets had plumes. But that's when it's just come out the water. Can you imagine that? It's just come out the water, still wet, and it says, oh, look at this. It's great. Amazing. It's really well preserved. So extraordinary state of preservation was recovered from waters of the Agadi Islands off Sicily by deep sea divers who were part of a society documenting these submerged sites. It is nearly a complete specimen of what's known as the Montefortino helmet type, commonly used during the time and stands out due to its well-preserved cheek pieces. It's got the cheek pieces, so they would have protected the cheeks. So you've got this thing at the back that protects from a sword hit, and you've got these cheek guards. So these stand out, these protect the cheeks. So these are the things that you don't usually find. So this whole thing is found. So how they found all this, I've no idea. Linked. So the Montefortino helmet is one of the most complete, the most beautiful ever recovered. So they say. So this is a type of helmet that might be typically Celtic looking, if you want to talk about as a style. This is the type of thing that's going to be used for the next 240 years by everybody who doesn't like the Romans. So this is a helmet of choice, and again may have been used by some Roman auxiliaries, so it's really difficult to tell. And interestingly enough, this helmet was still in use at the time of Julius Caesar, and it's likely that this type of helmet would have been worn by some people in Britain fighting Claudius in AD 43. So it's quite a familiar form, but we don't find these things. Really, really, and obviously it's bronze. So this was the first naval battle to take place between Rome and Carthage. So historians suggest the Carthaginians outnumbered the Roman army during this battle, but the better trained Romans defeated them. So in other words, we're taking sea battle from land to sea, and people fought the same at sea as they did on land, even though the Carthaginians were the sailors. They were the ones who were masters of the sea, but the Romans took away the Carthaginian mastery of the sea. Do you see why we've done these other things? So we're aware of the Punic Wars, which is the name for the Carthaginians. We're aware of this. We're aware of sort of the likes of Hannibal as Hannibal comes to the play of things later on. So this Punic War lasted over 2 decades, and the end of the long and costly war established Rome with its dominance. But again, this helmet is a little bit of archaeology from that, and I would immediately say that some ways, when people are writing about earlier history, it's more accurate than the later history, because when we think about a helmet like this, and we know the battle sites, Roman historians, if you can remember, were sometimes sided with the Carthaginians. So the bias is with the Carthaginians because the Roman historians. And we've only got really 3, maybe 4 Carthaginian historians. So we're reliant upon what the Romans are saying. But at the same time, we've got a helmet that credibly links this to a sea battle. So these finds not only enrich the historical knowledge of the battle, but strengthen the image of the history of the landscape. So what they're doing, they found large bronze handles of uncertain use. What are they about? But this is now the key, right? They found these big bronze handles that they worked out were not actually from this battle. They were actually from something else that occurred 150 years earlier. So what they've done CT X-ray scans of the landscape. They found 30 metal artifacts with incrustations on them. And listen to this. I can't show you an image which is a bit sort of thingamajig, but there we go. And we've got an item with an inscription on it. Amazing enough, just look at that. So they found other weapons like swords, spears, javelins, all associated with the battle. But we can't always assume that they're all associated with the battle, because maybe some of it may have fallen into the sea, like those big bronze handles that have ended up in the sea, which actually predate it. But the sea has guarded these artifacts. It's quite likely that we can sort of use a sense of typology to sort of link all these things together. And sort of that Findus Peachy thing, we got that sort of seriation method when we're sort of linking things together. So we can sort of work out that most of the stuff is actually found associated with this battle. So they ended up in the sea after a Roman ship was captured by the Carthaginians during the war. Interesting. How does that work? One of the items recovered during a previous campaign was also cleaned and found to bear the inscription of Sulpicio Questoro Probafate, which archaeologists suspect points to Gaius Sulpicius, a Roman commander who was on board that boat. So not only do we know about the battle through historians, we know about artifacts now that archaeologists have found, and happily enough, what we can work out is one of the commanders that we know about in history was actually there. This Gaius Sulpicius, because we've got an inscription associated with him. So what we are going to do now is, again, look at that. Absolutely fabulous. Andy, do you want to say something about this a minute before we go on to the next thing, which is also nautical?
No idea. What?
Isn't this amazing?
Well, yes. If it's come out the sea like that, yes.
absolutely amazing finding something like this. You don't expect to find
No.
this level of archaeology. And what we then have is another find associated nautical world. Now, this find itself is a
Carl,
site.
it's okay.
No, you can't say anything. Go on, please do.
The helmet because the helmet is bronze. Do barnacles not stick to it?
No, they don't.
Oh, so that's why it's so
this is why we've got boats that are cladded with copper, because the barnacles don't like copper. I think I'm pretty correct there.
Yeah, it looks as good as new.
Yeah, copper bottoms.
Copper bottoms, copper thing. Yeah, it does look new. That would be barnacles. If that was, say, iron. No, I can't use an iron example. The iron would have been so damaged by other factors. But if it was sort of silver, for example, it's very likely that would be encrusted with barnacles, because but barnacles do like certain things, and there would be little sort of marks all over it, but there's not on this. So no, it's bronze, but the copper and that. So barnacles are not going to touch it. And barnacles, if barnacles did touch this, they'd have eaten away at it. Because barnacles eat stone, so this is why we get marks on stone. So, but they haven't done this because they don't like copper. So this is why you get copper bottoms on boats. What's that, Rog?
Now, to say, it's quite amazing the amount of work in all this.
Yes.
Because making stuff in wood is one thing, but working the metal to get something for plating boats, as they did later on, it's quite a lot of ingenuity. This thing about copper, they didn't realize exactly the metallurgy of it all, but it's so effective at clearing off a problem that used to wreck the wooden boats. And they finally got
that's exactly so.
Later on, but people got there, and this looks a bit like something that Stuart had on his roof. That's the angle of it.
Oh, right, one of the finials.
Yeah,
one of the finials on the roof at.
I was looking at it and I thought, I thought, well, it's the angle. So yeah,
it's just that form of.
Wood is very handy.
It
just disappears.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a really interesting find. Obviously, we've got 30 other artifacts like this that they've actually found at the site. So.
Oh yeah.
So what we'll do, we'll just mention a little bit of this Cicero thing. This would have been ideal for Drina because she likes her a Cicero, but we'll take a little break because we'll have done a whole hour then. So that's fine. So a submerged Roman bathhouse in Baiae, and Baiae itself is there, Bay of Naples. And interesting enough, Baiae was known as a dodgy resort in the Roman period. So they're excavating the remains of ancient baths at Baiae. So this is in an area of volcanic activity. So these things have collapsed into the sea. That guy isn't diving down 80 meters. Which he would be dead. But the guy is diving down 3 meters underwater in the Gulf of Naples. Archaeologists found a remarkable preserved Roman bathhouse in the submerged ruins of Baiae, the Roman Empire's most notorious resort, a place that me and Roger would go to. The discovery that they're saying could be the first physical evidence of the villa of Marcus Tullius Cicero, the famous Roman orator, statesman, and philosopher. Remember, this is the famous Cicero because there were several. So we'll just mention a little bit more, then we're going to have a break. So the first discovery of this and what we're doing there, I think that's, look at that there. Look at that image there. It's got a mosaic. That there it is, and that little thing, and sort of an indication of maybe sort of a plunge bath there, but the mosaic there. Look how well preserved that is. Absolutely stunning. So this is the archaeology. It's 3 meters below the surface. They've owned, the Bay of Naples must have been dived by tens of thousands of people over the years, and they've only just found it. Amazing. But we've known about this Bay Eye place from day one. So the site is now being fully documented and reveals an intact mosaic floor. Wow, supported by small brick pillars, a component of the hypercore system. This ingenious landscape of hypercaust allowed hot airs to flow beneath the floor, and through hollow wall tiles, tubuli, the hollow box tiles that go through the wall, that's what we call them, box tiles, creating an evenly heated environment. And the complex appears to have, even a sauna. This is what we've got, was a typical feature of Roman elite leisure architecture. And what we might actually do now is take a break, which would be a good place to be. Don't look up any of the other things that I mentioned, i.e. the Newport thing, because I want to do that. But what we've got is the statesman Cicero. We're looking at, he was born a couple of years before my birthday, in the year 106 BC, and was assassinated not too long after Julius Caesar on the 7th of December 43 BC. And this guy is that sort of great sort of statesman. He's out there. So let's take a break. Actually, do you know what? I'm a bit knackered. So let's I could lie down and cuddle up to Roger now. Maybe not. or maybe Judith. No, her husband wouldn't be happy. Right, Margaret.
No, it was interesting. Thank you. Good pictures.
Good. And you like the reconstruction thing of how we think the Iron Age fishbone would have been, yeah?
Yeah. It's interesting that modern day swimming pools all have mosaics on the floor, copied from the Romans, I presume.
Well, that's one thing that we've copied from the Romans. We haven't copied anything else. We didn't copy civilization from the Romans, did we? And we didn't even copy peace from the civilizations, from the Roman civilization. We don't have peace. The Romans had peace. Life of Brian. Job done.
Did you say peace or peas?
And peas. Right. Okay then. So let's see. Anything? David, you got anything else to say? No. Roger.
No, the whole thing along with the seemed a small thing, maybe something other. On the fishbone roofs, the pitch was very shallow, relatively.
Oh, right.
And
What on the Roman version or the Iron Age version?
This is the Roman fishbone.
Yeah.
The pitch of the roofs was very shallow somehow, whether it was just a mistake in what they've interpreted.
It might be the way that
compared to the roofing which we got today, it's higher pitched in a wet climate. Does that show that the climate wasn't so wet then, or is it just a reproduction thing?
It might just be a mistake with the reproduction. Yeah.
It's obvious that the pitch is quite shallow. You might get in hot country, so you don't have to worry. Just something that's struggling. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It wasn't as steep, yeah. But remember, it is the south coast, and remember they don't have as much rain there. So
yeah.
But the thing is, there's a lot of things that are not really adding up now in British archaeology. The danger in British archaeology is that we say one thing is happening in one place and it's happening everywhere. and that shouldn't be the case. If we've got a band of Roman era stuff going on, sort of more or less, I don't know, north of sort of St. Albans, sort of north of sort of Reading and that type of thing. So if all that's sort of still functioning, but in the south it's not. But then we take the evidence from the south and say, oh, that's what's happening everywhere. Roman civilization has collapsed in Britain, but it clearly hasn't. It's not collapsed. It's not collapsed at all. And
you're saying about in Rome that the 410 thing was a proclamation in Rome that everything, the government, the administration of this country would stop. But it could be, number one, certain peoples who got used to living here stayed, including trained military troops who actually stayed in forever because they preferred it anyway with the freedoms they got. But going back to Europe, they were going to be in for hammering. They knew that.
They will have probably had families here.
476. Yes, that makes more sense. They carried on. They wouldn't suddenly stop.
No.
It's okay on paper to say it, but it doesn't mean anything because people don't live that way.
So the script was that this sort of plea of the people of the Bretonia may have been the town south of Rome, and but the whole point is define not being a Roman, and if you're still building mosaics in the 420s, you're a Roman. You've taken on the Roman idea, the Roman gods, the Roman way, the Roman trade, and the new god is Christianity. So that's the great legacy of the Roman era. Everyone, Christianity is the way forward, and this is
interesting how they did the cutting of the tesseract. I went on that before one.
Yes,
quite clever getting the strips from which they can cut out the squares. So getting those strips to start with, to me, seems quite a challenge.
It is.
What rock they use altogether, I don't know if it's based on marbles or what.
Well, basically, mosaics are using everything. We in some mosaics we're using bits of old tile. We're using marble. We're some mosaics we see glass being used. We've got glass being used in mosaics. Some mosaics we've actually got gold pieces being used. So everything's being used.
Yeah.
Everything's being used in these mosaics. And so there's a lot happening. Thank you. Thank you for that, Rog. Judith.
Just quickly about this not being a Dark Ages. There was a theory by a couple of historians who are dead now, that they said that rather than the lists of kings and people of famous people, instead of them being listed, what am I trying to say? Instead of them being following on from each other, they were actually together at the same time. So time was compressed. Instead of I can't think of the right word. Do you know what I mean?
No, I know
exactly. Like the Bible, so and so begat so and so begat so and so. Instead of them being in a long line down like this, they were a line like that. Does that make sense to anybody?
No, it is. What you're saying makes complete sense. Is that there's the period between 476, the official end of the Roman Empire in the West. That period all the way to 1066 is, in quick mathematics, is 600 years. And people say, is not as much going on in that period. We don't know as much. But if that period is actually 300 years shorter, and historians have actually expanded it, and it wasn't 600 years when in fact it was 300 years. So therefore, everything changes, and it's so. One thing that we see in ancient Egypt, one thing that we see in ancient Egypt is that when we're calculating the pharaohs, for example, and this is the same with Rome. Rome calculates its calendar based on the Roman emperors. So if we just do something really familiar, so the five years of the reign of Caligula, then we talk about the years of the reign of Claudius from AD 43 to AD 54. So so we've got the 11 years of the reign of Claudius. Then we start with Nero. So we say, all right, well, this is the first year of Nero. So what the Romans did, they calculated everything like that, right? They didn't say, oh my God, Jesus Christ has just been born. What we're going to do, we're going to start year 1, 2, and whatever. They didn't do that. So if there was a Roman emperor, right, that had the damnatio memoriae associated with him, who reigned for 2 years, right? So that means that the entire calendar of the Roman world is out, because everything about that Roman emperor was erased. So we got 2 years missing in a Roman calendar. And that doesn't sound as bizarre as it is, because what we've got in ancient Egypt, this is one thing that the wonderful historian John Romer used to talk about. In ancient Egypt, we have these pharaohs, and then somebody said, oh, hang on, we found another pharaoh. So where does that pharaoh tie in? So, okay, so if we tie that pharaoh in, who reigned for 2 years, and then there's another pharaoh afterwards, therefore the amount of time that ancient Egypt existed is 2 years longer. So that knocks out all our dates. So we've got a big problem with our history, because some things really don't sit right, and we've got to be very careful with that. So in other words, when I used to say to my students in Lampeter, dates are not important, is true, because sometimes dates can change. They're even talking about the fact, which most of us archaeologists have resisted, because we were educated that Vesuvius went off on the 24th of August in the year 1879, and it occurred at 12 o'clock. After 2 hours, Pompeii was covered in ash and all the rest of it. And Herculaneum went under a lava flow. They say they're actually happening in October. So that really screws with everything. So we're a few months out. So, but we just stick to that, because that's what we know, because it makes things easier for now. Because if we try and change things now, it makes it very, very difficult. The difference is when we look at 1066, again, the 14th of October, 1066, William I was proclaimed king. On the 25th of December, 1066, then our historical chronology works. There's too much history and there's too much information to corroborate all of that, which is great. But before that, there are dark periods. And that is the issue. Right. So, Anne, anything you want to say quickly before we have a break?
No, it's interesting so far. And I'm sorry I'm going to miss Cicero and Caesar, but I really must go to bed. I am struggling to stay awake.
And even though we start half an hour earlier these days, don't worry about it. And we've got a recording. We'll send that to you. No problem, Anne.
Thank you very much.
No.
Good night.
No, Anne. Anne. And with Anne gone, Andy, anything you want to say? No, Anne.
No, other than I love the idea that people are starting to suddenly realize that the Roman culture and influences didn't suddenly stop at 410. It seems like a blatantly blinking obvious to me. How could it,
They would have had family, wouldn't they? They'd have had wives and children.
Of course they would, yeah.
The thing is,
and all that.
There's no such thing as dates at this time, right? Because people, okay. I don't go with the rescript of the fact that what happened in 410, right? Rome was sacked by Alaric, who was actually chained by a Roman. An auxiliary sacked Rome and set her alight. So a Roman destroyed Rome, in other words. And that was in 410. Honorius is up in a palace in Ravenna looking, Rome's been sacked, I'm in Ravenna, it's fine, And we start to think, well, there's a lot of stuff going on. So 410 could mean anything to whoever. But the point is, the tantalizing point is that most of the military in Britain at that stage wasn't from Italy anyway. They weren't. The Roman army really ceased to exist by the late 300s. So the Roman army was just were just bands of people that were trained to honor the emperor and to then honor somebody else and all these different things. And then we've got Constantine III, who takes a load of people from Britain to become Roman emperor, right? So this is happening. We got with that Magnus Maximus in the 380s. So we got all these things going on, but at the end of the day, if you're a little garrison somewhere, you're not going to leave. You're just going to stay put.
Yeah.
And this is what we're saying. It's not like Africa. It's not like what happened in Zimbabwe in 1980, where okay, let's say some words that are not appropriate anymore. But the white majority wanted to keep control of Zimbabwe. You know, it's not like that. But even when you look at something like that, right? Mr. Smith, who formed the government, he remained an MP in Zimbabwe for another decade or more. So you still have all these. Oh my God, I hate talking like this. You have all these white farmers, right? And but what I'm trying to say is that white rule just didn't finish in 1980. It continued, and things just didn't end. People still farm. People still did these things, and there's still white guys in Zimbabwe today. Oh my God, I could be cut off for this. But the point is what I'm trying to say is that history itself is not dates. It doesn't. You know, we look at 1066 and we look that there was resistance from the people in Britain for another 20 years. And also the people in Cymru, Wales resisted the Normans and their other counterparts until the 3rd of October in the year 1283. And the Scots resisted for a lot longer. So the Scots resisted until 1707. So, you know, history is not written on dates. Nothing is written on dates. And we've got to remember that. What we were taught at school is wrong. Very wrong.
You know, these days we can have a DNA test to see where our ancestors came from.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody could have a DNA test which shows that an ancestor came from Bulgaria, but it could be that that person was actually stationed over in Britain during the Roman conquest. He was Bulgarian, but it could be that he was actually living here.
Yep.
And he decided to stay. For example, my DNA is Gypsy European, Black African, and you know, that's my DNA. My mum's got an extremely rare blood group, which is North African. So you know.
So that person could have been serving the Roman conquest over here.
There's all these things. There's all these markers in our DNA that
story.
That tell a rich, diverse, endless story of information. And what we've got to do, this is a thing now. We've got to debate history and archaeology differently, right? There's no such thing as having two people with two views, because sooner or later that person with their views is going to be wrong anyway. So what we've got to do is accept that lots of things that these two people are saying are correct. And so, yeah, what I'm getting at is that occasionally I come across people who say, "Oh, Karl, you're obsessed with the Romans. You know, you love them. You talk about the Romans romantically." No, I don't. And then they say, "Oh, you know, you accept you're one of those academic university archaeologists," which I may have qualifications, but I wouldn't call myself that. They say that, "Oh, you believe that everything in Britain was the responsibility where we are today of the Romans." And you know what? And 99% of the time, I don't say that. But it's because of this perception that I call it the Roman era. What else am I going to call it? Because that's what it is. There's no other way of putting it because.
And they were very advanced, Carl. You've got to admire them for what they achieved, despite the terrors and the rough way of living, brutality. You know, you've got to admire it, because seeing the Colosseum and the design of the Colosseum, not just the stonework and that,
and the
in that
Pontagon
bygone age and everything else, was quite amazing. And the battle formations they used and stuff were well thought out.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of planning going on, and they used their skills. In other words, they recruited craftsmen into the army. What a cracking idea. You've got to build your forts, everything. Great.
All of what Roger said is correct, right? That is the point with these two debates. Everything that Roger said is correct. But what we're also talking about now is correct, right? None of that is the ruling argument. So what Roger's saying is correct. What I've said is correct. We're no longer saying that Romans came over here, killed everybody, and built forts, and it's a Roman world. So we're no longer saying that, but we used to, and now we've come away from that, which is brilliant. So what I'm going to do now, I've actually got to go outside. It's 8:31. We'll be back at 8:45. So we'll be back. So Roger, keep them entertained. And whatever, Roger, do not talk about taking anybody to Poland.
No.
Not even to a Christmas market.
I'm not going anywhere near it.
No Christmas markets, no.
Oh, yeah.
That's with Putin's third-rate army.
No, oh God, I'm going.
No. Stay put. Much better. You fought long and hard to get the peace.
By the way, AI said you are now married to Drina, and because you got intimate on a dinghy floating away from Poland.
Oh. Yes, we fought long and hard to have peace, yeah. You get riots, a bit discontent, the malcontent, but it's a lot better than crazy Russia with maniacs trying to be big. Stupidity. Always. But there we are. Never mind, and we'll carry on doing our thing, and they can play their games. Keep it simple, I prefer anyway. Enough going on in the world without adding to it. Dealing with nature and all the storms coming in tomorrow. We're going to get a blasting. The northerners, I don't know, as far as you will get it first. Then tomorrow night we'll get a storm coming in. Oh, wonderful. Drought to storm. Wonderful. So there we are. Meanwhile, it's going to be back. Oh. Well.
I think the everything been scratched back. Let's have 2 fireworks.
What?
Somebody let's have 2 fireworks.
There's something pop. I thought, what the hell is that?
Fireworks.
Is it?
Fireworks, yeah.
That's what I thought. I don't know what's building up with it yet. This is the party or birthday as well. I wonder what it was. I think pop. It's really something on some other.
The sound of.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Please.
Is it female cut your hair?
Yes. Another one. Each will check with me. And she had my head. Just this position, just that. But she was really thorough. These are the names.
No, they don't. They don't finish your end though. No.
What?
Women cut them at the back of their hair differently to men.
Well, I can't see that.
really can't actually.
I know it's shorter, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I tried to bob from.
So, there we are. That's something done. And you know, I got my shirt. I never could look at it, see it as okay. All at once, is it? That's pretty good. But that really, he's actually got the direction on that child. You know, things actually quick. Yeah. And I'm supposed to be taking shifts going.
They were in high school.
Oh,
We had children like that.
and then kids.
Some of the babies said,
Yeah, valid the other.
no question. She's got relatives.
So she'll be out there today, then
God.
he'll be out himself.
He's just got
He's
relatives.
so
And the Christian's got her with a problem. Right
there
there.
for 2 weeks. And Anne. Liam and Anne. Hello, Leanne. That's much news for all the sort of some.
Okay.
Or they go
Half the time.
5 to
10.
20. There's something else's birthday.
Okay. I don't know if you know when you saw her birthday was. Amazing for her birthday to say that. Well.
Yes, indeed. So I've got about 2 of them left. Yes, but then I'll check a lot of points.
And you and your birthday was.
Kids, you know, we have 2.
Not
You know, 1 was it?
2 weeks.
Oh,
Or is it 2 weeks? A long time to a hospital, so probably it's medical stay down.
Oh.
It's annoying.
So, sailing backwards. A lot of money people there, so all do their friends in school, so but I've got time for it. You went?
So you have to hand me and we're invited to a trip with them.
Who?
We said, no, hand me invited to the actual wedding. It was on church, we were just there.
No.
And then you can see that's
Oh, lovely. That's all in fun. In Dutch. Yeah. The grandparents on that down the road. It's the most new thing coming. What's in Canada's 56, no? Only new 60. Well. When you really clear.
Quite something in said Yeah, Richard 2 years older than me, and I'm 42, so he's 44.
You say that?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, if you've got that going,
But no,
well, that's much more fun. Even as a look.
mm,
Mm. 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 Well, that's what anything for the team is called. Like, that's the one thing. Mm. 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 It's fun. Mm. 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 It's got one, it's a one.
mm,
It's doesn't change. Mm. And this is usually also fun. So yeah, because
so, some areas in England are planned to take them.
all of them.
Almost, I've lost a couple of ones because I didn't also.
Mm. It's
Well, this
the
time,
gas is drying up and it's suddenly now and the world. Mm.
and we went to the garage, the guy put the water button back, but so we're having to pay this way, put it that way, well, I can't get down around there. And I can't use the water, but I've asked Brian to put it back in.
So is this?
When did the garage,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh.
we moved the water button, didn't put it back.
Mm.
You should get me excited when he's got tomorrow.
It's in there.
Friends in the future, I was there to do that at the moment.
It's feeling really nice and
Mm.
in the morning. For the stars and make the showers first thing. And then
Yeah, the same time that there is something
mm.
that's another thing. But then one of the old branches was stuff like that down, but
Who's that?
like the rose tree out there.
Well, to be coming back.
Cut some bit back.
So coming back to the back, we're only stuff all the chair way.
It's one time of year to do it though. We will.
Well, I don't know.
Like, well,
You could finish stuff, but in clothing. And then you got that.
Minutes, 10 minutes, and I'm doing the string and everything. It's all that look like it. What's on time?
Well, yeah, it's Rowdy morning, please. Morning.
Of course, nine.
Hmm?
What's the nine?
Is back in the name
Mm.
on station. I'm not writing on next one.
It was the time.
The code comes to oh. Found him. There Let's do this. Where do you want it? I'll tell you to you. But you took it out and you didn't say. That's awesome. Oh,
Well, we're ready to start now. I just got to do this.
okay, John, I'm waiting. Yeah.
Beth? Beth yn oed o'ch chi ddoi nawr?
What?
Beth?
Oh. Oh. Right, let's see. Oh, it's quiet. Oh.
Pwy o'ch chi nawr, Roger?
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with the good old mushroom. But, Cicero, let's crack on.
Margaret's still in the
Roger,
bathroom.
No, I'm here.
Well, you were stood in the bathroom naked.
Oh,
No,
me? No, it's too cold.
it has got really cold, hasn't it?
Yes. We're going to have a lot of rain tomorrow down here.
Oh,
Again. Go from drought to flood.
we've had epic rain here.
Have you?
Yeah, really torrential.
Yes. And
It's-
heavy winds, because that does the damage, doesn't it, at the end?
Hmm.
And things leak. You think, oh.
Carl, you know all this in the Bay of Naples, all the
Yeah.
settlements, everything in the bay. Can people go diving there,
Yeah.
or is it a protected area?
The problem is with this is that you've got to have proof that you're not going to be taking things.
Yes.
And for example, I'll tell you a little bit about this. With in regards to Greece, for example, yeah, you've got to come up with a plan of action, and then you have a government official that supervises you whilst you're diving, and that's in Greece. So I don't know if that's the same rule in Italy, but I can imagine that is something similar. And the big problem with the Bay of Naples is it's an active landscape. There are ships, there are boats. There's a lot going on. So I can imagine that you'd need certain permits.
Mm.
Yes.
Now it's this place Baiae there, and it's in regards to all of this, and it's directly linked. Yeah, there you go. But the one thing that I find really interesting in my notes, not just the mosaics being found, but traces of ancient wall painting are still attached to the interior of the buildings that they're actually finding there. Wall paintings underwater, showing the richly decorated spaces once inhabited by Rome's powerful citizens. Because this landscape, not only bathhouses, not only buildings, this is all about a place for people to treat from the hectic nature of Rome. Remember, Rome itself is probably one of the first places on the planet to actually have a population of 1 million people. That 1 million people, that's a lot of people. So lots of the officials like Cicero would have had these villas that they would retreat to. According to classical sources, Cicero had a villa at Baiae, and this would make this structure, a place that this may have been where he would retire to and prepare his speeches. Now, obviously, we don't have a sign saying that this belonged to Cicero. So this it had sulfurous springs, which are associated with the likes of the volcanic activity, and this was a landscape that Julius Caesar would have walked amongst, and Nero also had a palace here. And Hadrian died here in the year AD 138. So it is described as a vortex of luxury and a harbour of vice. Ideal for me and Roger. One of its most notorious events was in AD 39, when Emperor Caligula, defying a prophecy, ordered a floating bridge of nearly 5 kilometers across the Gulf to be built and rode across it on horseback. So he actually built this sort of bridge across the whole bay. Baiae fell victim to invasions and ultimately the geological instability of the landscape, and it became completely lost under the waves by the 1500s. Today, its ruins, statues of Lloyd, particularly streets and villas, form one of the world's greatest underwater archaeological parks, which you can visit. I think this is an answer. You can visit looking at the archaeology through glass bottom boats rather than diving. So you've got to prove a reason to dive. You just can't dive here. So the newly discovered landscape that you can see in front of us, even with the wall paintings and all the rest of it, it'd be nice to think that this is associated with Cicero. The mosaic is partly covered by mineral deposits, and you've obviously got the wall paintings, and I can't really understand what they're talking about. My brain has gone a minute. In this article, it says that they are making steps to conserve the surviving wall paintings in situ.
Oh, good.
I don't know what technique using, but obviously the colors are still there and all the rest of it. And they found loads of ceramic artifacts and architecture. Wouldn't this be great to be the place of Cicero to identify another locality where a famous person is associated with? Obviously, when we get locations like Nero's baths, clearly made by Nero, then we know Nero was there, or the Hadrian's baths, or the baths of Caligula, all these places. But obviously, these other figures in history, like Julius Caesar, Cicero, it's good to actually track these people down. So next, what they're finding here, a papyrus scroll that was buried beneath layers of volcanic ash at Herculaneum. And the point is that now this directly links in with Plato's academy in Athens. So what they've got, this papyrus scroll that was buried beneath layers of volcanic ash. This is our next little story now. So let's go with the next little story. The next little story takes us as follows. If I can read my notes, hang on a minute. Let's read my notes. Right, okay. So the headlines are, it goes as follows. This newly deciphered papyrus scroll reveals the location of Plato's grave. Amazing, isn't it? So you've got a document saying where Plato is buried. And one of the things that they're doing, this is high resolution, right, that they're using. So what they've done, they've managed to unwrap one of these scrolls, and then they're reading it. The charred versions they're having
new technique. Yeah,
they use it. The charred versions that are completely sealed and you can't unravel them.
Absolutely,
you've got that new technique that you actually read the layers. So thanks to an ancient text and specialized scanning technology, researchers say they have solved the mystery of Plato's burial place. The Greek philosopher was interred in the garden of his Athens academy, where he once tutored a guy by the name of Aristotle. We knew Plato was buried at the academy, but where to? Because it's quite a big area. But thanks to the scans, we know he was buried in a garden in the private area near the sacred shrine to the Muses. So we were talking about Cicero and we were talking about a link to Cicero. That's something else. And now with Herculaneum, it's telling us precisely where this amazing famous person Plato was buried. And there's a bit of irony here when we're talking about Plato and we're talking about the Bay of Naples, and we've mentioned Cicero, and we're mentioning Pliny, and we're mentioning AD 79, is Plato the one who writes about the fact that you've got Atlantis. So Plato's living 300 years before the birth of Christ. But in this document discovered at Heracleum, it's saying where Plato's buried, and it's precisely where Plato's buried. So famously, what we've got, we've got Heracleum, and this is another thing we're talking about. We're now looking. There's another weird link, a tantalizing link, Roger. Right, the villa that they found all these scrolls was known to be a villa that belonged to Julius Caesar's father-in-law, because Julius Caesar's father-in-law had a library of papyri and scrolls at Herculaneum, and this document is also a document that may have actually been looked at and read by Julius Caesar himself. Can you imagine that? So all of this stuff links together. It's great today, and this links with all the preservation stuff with the Heracleum we've mentioned, and Pompeii, and over the past few weeks. And while the volcano's blast damaged and buried the papyri, it didn't destroy them. And again, that's the point. So this entire world, if it wasn't for Vesuvius burying this landscape, we wouldn't have this scroll today, and vis-a-vis, we wouldn't have a clue where Plato was precisely buried.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
So researchers only discovered the trove of text in the 1700s, in the late 1700s, about 1780s, now known as the Heracleum scrolls. They are the only large-scale library from the classical world that has survived in its entirety. Except the problem is when it was discovered, when some of these scrolls were discovered in the late 1780s, some of them were opened using techniques that meant that most of what we've got there didn't survive. So again, there's Plato scroll telling us where he's buried. Following this discovery, historians have tried unrolling some of the scrolls, but now modern attempts, these coal-like relics to dust. So instead of using techniques that are going to damage them, we're now able to understand these fragile texts. Now, in particular, with this one document, they were able to decipher 2,000 characters from this one scroll, and now a separate team has used infrared and X-ray scanners, a technique researchers call a bionic eye, to read over 1,000 new words on one of Heraclean's papyri, the history of the academy. So the history of Plato's academy in Athens itself, and the burial place at Athens. We've got that link to do with Julius Caesar. We've got the library. We've got all these modern techniques. How exciting is this? And also, this is written by a known. This isn't written by Plato, because obviously Plato's dead. This is written by a philosopher known as Philodemus, who wrote the history of the academy. So that Plato's actual school that was founded 300 years before the birth of Christ, and the carbon-based ink has survived. So they were basically themselves turned to carbon by the eruptions, making them very difficult to read. However, the new techniques has meant the bionic eye were able to, what they reckon now, they're able to read at least 30% of all the documents that they've discovered. So that's absolutely unbelievable. So we know about Plato from the 300s. He was originally born in 427 at the time of great classical Greece, and obviously writing the history of many things. And obviously Socrates studied underneath him as well. So, no, it's the other way around. Plato was taught by Socrates. Sorry. So Plato traveled to Italy, and while staying in Syracuse on the coast of Sicily, the philosopher was captured and enslaved by the city's rulers. So that's something that they sort of cite in last Indiana Jones. And so Plato was previously thought to have been captured in 387 BC, but Philodemus's text suggests this occurred much earlier. It appears to have sold as a slave as early as 404 BC. And when the Spartans conquered Aegina, or alternately in 399 BC, immediately after the death of Socrates. Plato eventually returned to Athens. The school was founded in approximately the year 347, according to this great historian that's writing about Plato, Philodemus. We know that he died in 347. Hundreds of, obviously not BC, because we didn't know Jesus Christ was coming, but there you go. So hundreds of Herculaneum scrolls have yet to be read. Can you imagine? There could be a complete story amongst that is actually written by Plato himself, telling us every single detail about Atlantis and where Atlantis is. Can you imagine that? And we're also looking at Sophocles, plays of Sophocles, and tracks by Aristotle are believed to survive amongst all those works that have not been read. And just there could be whole works that we don't even know anything about. So what they're doing, they're using these new techniques instead of unrolling these black charred documents. They need this bionic eye to read them. We are now working on works about the Stoics, the Socrates, the Socrates, the Pythagoreans and the Epicureans, all these different stories, and they're hoping to understand the deciphering of all of this, and maybe a lot more is to be learned. Oh God, this is wearing me out. So next thing, what we do, we look at some images associated with Socrates. Just a little bit about that now. Taking a little bit of cough. So this is an image. This is an image of Plato's Academy, and this is Plato's Academy in Athens, and there's not much left of it, but they think they know where the garden is. And the one amazing thing about this is that all of these things link in tonight, and it's a great academy. So all these bits of history come together, but it's not just written in the history, it's actually in the archaeology where we actually get the facts. So now this one, which I'm sure maybe one or two of you may have actually looked up, and this was actually headline news, and I don't know if any of you may have actually seen this, but hopefully we can understand what this true story is about. Let's just get my notes. Right, so we've done our Cicero. We've got this one now, and then we look at one of these people that are. So now, a few days ago, this is dated the 15th of September. So that's going to be Monday, I think. On Friday, a few days ago, they reported that. One second, my device has just failed on me, so I've got to get the other report on my other device. 1 second. Did any of you actually see this report, guys, whilst I'm getting my notes back up?
No.
No?
A Newport County cleans up the Roman.
Yeah. I'm just getting the
bathrooms.
Yeah, here we go. So
Oh.
when you look this up, right, when you Newport Roman bath found, hang on, my notes just failed on my one device. I just got to get them up. Right, so here we go. So back on Friday, speculation over Roman bath find beneath historic Gwent Pond. Right, so so the initial headlines back on Friday were, it says speculation over Roman bath find beneath historic Gwent Pond. So they reckon that there, hang on, that there is the base of a Roman bath, right? That's what they put in the newspapers. I took one look at that and I thought, that doesn't look right. So what they then did, the news that's come out today, is Newport Council clears up Roman bath rumours. Newport City Council has clarified that recent speculation about Roman bathing structures beneath the historical pond is, well, a bit premature. So when you look at that, I'm honest with you, those slabs don't really look Roman. In a social media post, the council noted that while the site is rich in heritage, the idea of Roman baths lurking beneath the mud is unlikely given the age and context. The area surrounding 14 locks was once part of Roman South Wales. And so what was actually found? Stone-lined and unusually symmetrical features, enough to raise eyebrows, perhaps, but not yet enough to rewrite history books. And listen to this. They look in the history books, and Newport City Council confirms that the tiles in question were laid down in the 1970s.
What?
So people are believing that this is like a Roman baths, and they're actually not. So we hate to disappoint the legions who were excited by such a possibility of bathing here, but sadly these claims are silly rather than Silurian, as the slabs are about 1,900 years too late. So we can confirm that the slabs were actually from the 1970s. So it's not true, folks. This is not Roman archaeology, and what they said in the media was actually wrong. Now, what we've got is a few images. So we've got Thracia, which is all the yellow area there. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to look a little bit about the Thracians. Now, I've just lost my original notes on my one device, so I'm looking at my other device. So you're gonna have to bear with me a second. I'm just reloading my stuff. So right, so here we go. We're just gonna have to go with another source. Thracians. Hang on a minute. Right. Okay, let's just get back with my notes. Let's have a look at that image. We did these reconstruction drawings today, so that's good. So the Thracians. So one thing about the Thracians, the reasons why I want to mention these is that these people have been around for a very, very long time. Yeah, and these are two reconstructions that we managed to put together today. Both looking warriors. And the one thing about the Thracians, if we look at this map, is that they're sort of a little bit south of the area of the Dacians. Yeah. So and the Thracians would have eventually been absorbed by the likes of the Roman world. So the area of the Thracians is actually quite big, and the exact origins of the Thracians is definitely uncertain. But we know that they were early farmers, and maybe that these people started to develop as this indigenous people with their indigenous language, separate from the Greeks, approximately 5,500 years ago. So their culture completely basically flourished. It was, according to ancient Greek and Roman historians, the Thracians were a people making their own way in the world, but the Greeks and the Romans didn't like them. And they didn't like them because they were a little bit warlike. And there's one of their warriors. Doesn't he look good, Roger? With his strange shaped sword. The Greek and Roman historians said the Thracians were uncivilized and remained largely disunited as a people. But it's very likely that the Thracians are part of the original story that's associated with Homer's Iliad. So if Homer's Iliad takes us back to 1,200 years BC, then these people actually come into that. Now, they're a kingdom that seems to become sort of unified, and throughout much of its early history, it did eventually become an ally of the likes of the Greeks. But by 400 BC, the state showed first signs of fatigue after they sort of united together, and they were around before the likes of Alexander the Great, and Alexander the Great conquered them, but they become an independent people again. The Thracians were eventually conquered by the Romans, and one of these people sort of out on the edge there. They were conquered by the Romans by around the year 46 AD, in the reign of Claudius. The Romans made them a province, and that was something that was very much at the heart of the developing Roman Empire absorbing this area. So the Thracians described as warlike and barbarians by the Greeks, and the Romans, as we've mentioned. One second, I'm just going to check on.
Okay, I'm going to pack it in a minute. Carl?
What's that, Roger?
I'm going to make a sign off. I'm going to sign off.
And you're signing off. So we'll see you next. I'm not long anyway now, Roger, but we'll see you next week.
Yes. Okay, night all.
Okay.
Bye, night, Roger.
Night, Rog.
Take care.
I'll carry on, Rog. Night. See you next week, Roger.
I'll be back. Cheers.
See you next week, Rog.
Bye.
Interesting.
I haven't got long. I've only got 5 minutes. Anyway, night, Rog. Right, we're going to carry on. So basically, the Greeks and the Romans, that's another point. The reason why we're looking at this, the Romans, whoever these people were, however they developed as a people, however they developed as a civilization, coming and going by being conquered by this people, being conquered by that people, getting independence, but then eventually being conquered by the Romans in AD 46. The Romans referred to everybody outside, and the Greeks referred to everybody outside their world as barbarian, no matter who they were. They had their own language, and the Thracian language was still being spoken up until the AD 500s. And again, this sort of link with Homer's Iliad, and it's sort of said that they were very warlike. And in the work of Homer's Iliad, the Thracians are actually referred to as being horsemen, as being these very sort of richly endowed horsemen, but they were not associated with Agamemnon. These were allies of the Trojans, and naturally, being allies of the Trojans, it's not far away from where Troy actually is. So just a bit of a skip and a jump across the Sea of Mara, and you go to the likes of Troy, and that's these were great allies of the Trojans. And one of the things, if we look at these figures as we actually end, we put these images together. One of their customs was tattooing, common amongst both men and women. And the Thracians culturally interacted with lots of different people around them. And we've mentioned their language. They've got an interesting mythological foundation. And when we think about these, their identity and their distribution and the way they were, this is sort of a little bit Hollywood wooded as an image. But one of the things, the curved swords, and this is something that was very familiar when we look at the Dacians. So obviously the reconstructions are sort of more Hollywood, and you've got these female warriors as well. So what I wanted to do tonight was just sort of end on that, sort of giving you another culture. Thracian helmets were a little bit different than the helmet that is actually shown in this image. A Thracian helmet had a nose guard, had very intricate sort of cheek plates as well. But thinking about these as being very warlike, thinking about these as being people that would have held out against the likes of the Persians coming over from Turkey across the Sea of Marmara, the likes, these were sort of Spartan type warriors who were very much into their independence as sort of small insular states that sort of created the idea of the Thracian world, and bringing in the fact that they've got female warriors as well. And this was something that I wanted to bring to you to sort of give you another little bit of an idea of a world outside Rome, a world that Rome would have conquered by the likes of AD 46. But the Thracians would be a people that would never rise again, unlike the Dacians that would rise again and resist Roman rule forevermore after the year 275, after they were given independence by Emperor Aurelian. But the Thracians never ever rose again. They disappeared from history. Their language, as I said, continued into the AD 500s. So on that note, let's call that a day. Probably some of you are getting a bit tired, so let's see who's left. David also left us, so there's only 3 left. So let's see if there's any questions. Margaret.
Well, I was very interested to hear about the scroll that was found.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. But yeah, the scroll linked in with the academy in Athens, and sort of that links obviously to Julius Caesar, and then in a way that sort of links in with Herculaneum, and the Bay of Naples, Baiae site linked in with that, went under the sea because of seismic activity. It was all sort of linked together today. And also the watery find at the coast of Sicily, dating back to the battle which took place in 441 BC, associated with the First Punic War, and this great sea battle, the Carthaginians and the Romans. So all that sort of linked in together. It was a sort of interesting set of finds. I've never had that amount of Roman stuff in 1 week.
You just wonder how all those famous philosophers' names came down to us, Aristotle and Socrates and Plato. How did we get to hear about all of these people, seeing as their library was destroyed?
The difference is that the stuff that has survived has been retranslated and translated again. The difference is with the library in Herculaneum and the various other bits of document that we might find along Vindolanda are actually contemporary documents that haven't been recopied and reconstituted by medieval people. The difference is with finding the stuff at Herculaneum is that it might be very different than the stuff that the medieval people have translated. So say, for example, we might have all this stuff written down by Plato, which is copies of copies of copies of copies, which was found in a monastery somewhere down the road. So it might be so different than what was originally written down. This is one of the things with the likes of the Bible, that the danger is finding original text from the AD 300s might change fundamentally what the Bible's saying. Now, the difference is with the likes of Islam is that the holy book, they do copies. So the book that did exist is destroyed. So you don't get old copies of Islamic holy books because they're destroyed.
Yeah.
Because the new copy's made, right? But with Christianity, we've got all the old books. So when we look at these source documents, it's almost like what we've got with the original works of Shakespeare, and there was printing, so we got luckily we've got Shakespeare stuff that was printed, which you got first and second edition surviving, so you can go back to that and say this is what we're going to be doing with Macbeth. So if you've got some plays that are in these that are fundamentally different from the copies, that does cause us a problem.
Mm.
Because we say, for example, Shakespeare, we know that Shakespeare is Shakespeare, right? But we don't know if Plato's work is Plato's because it's been changed. We don't know if Socrates' work is going to be the same. We don't know what has changed over time. It's Chinese whispers. So somebody thought, oh, he's actually talking about water, isn't he? So we'll put that in it. But he wasn't talking about water at all. He was talking about fire. So you go back to the original document, and the original document actually tells you the truth.
Yeah, very good.
Right, Margaret. That's you done. So Judith. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, about the Roman paving slabs. Had somebody done it as a jest, do you think? Because if you find anything, it's either got to be Roman or Norman, hasn't it? Or Viking. It's not anything else.
One of the things that happened a few years ago, there was I think it must have been a river in sort of somewhere up in the northwest. I think it may have been in Lancaster way, and they found. Can you remember this, Andy? That they found a river, and there was slabs lining the base of the river, right? And they said that's a Roman road, and then it turned out that was the actual natural geological stuff. But they put it in the newspapers as a Roman road, a Roman ford found with the original slabs in situ and in the stream, and nobody put into the fact that they would have eroded away and all the rest of it. But they look so clear, these slabs, that they'd been laid, but it's a geological formation. So, right, anything else, Judith?
No, that was it.
Right, anything from you, Andy?
No, I've nothing to add. It's I think you've covered it all. I like Margaret was saying. I love the idea that there can be bits of information written down that haven't been found or translated yet, that suddenly find something like Plato's tomb. I thought you were going to say it was Alexander's tomb in that other one that you found in Armenia or wherever it was.
Yeah, we did actually see an image that it was talking about Alexander the Great's tomb, but that wasn't it. It wasn't Alexander the Great's tomb. But the point is that when you actually find stuff that's related to real people, it makes those people real, right? Yeah. So you can. I get to say it, but I don't actually mean this. Plato could have been made up, right?
Yeah.
But when you actually get a document that is written by somebody who was aware of Plato or knew Plato, right? When you get a place that Cicero lived at, right? When you get an inscription that you got on a boat of this Gaius Scipiolus or whatever he was called, and these people are real. So we can talk about this guy being on this boat. Anyone could have said that, but then we actually get his name on something, so he was there.
Yeah, I mean, you get that with the tablets from Vindolanda. It's really
brings it to life.
Personal. And that you're saying that there's information lost in the libraries. They are now managing to decode those burnt manuscripts from Pompeii. Is it Pompeii or Herculaneum? I can't remember.
Herculaneum,
yeah. And managing to actually read those now. So that's just there's like so much information that's going to come out of that as well.
It is amazing that we've in other words we could change a lot of history by finding the original documents.
Yeah.
And it's like
it goes back to that stop digging, isn't it, and study what we've got.
The thing is, these tablets, right? Thank you for saying that. I'm glad somebody agrees with me. These tablets have been there, right?
Yeah.
Since 1780, right?
Yeah.
And that's 240 years ago. And we got the Ankaranka, I've said it wrong, Papyri, which is in Egypt, right? We got a big pit of stuff that was dumped out of some ancient library in the ground, right? Most of that hasn't been looked at either. So we could have whole historians that we didn't know existed. And suddenly we've given them a name again, and suddenly we've given them some information. And so say for example, there's a library somewhere that talks about the end of the Roman world and its decay, and somebody's got a diary, a day-to-day diary. Well, that would change everything we know. That would change fundamentally all the guesswork, all the letters. Saint Augustus coming over here in the 446 or whatever, that could be completely made up. So what we got somebody actually at the time writing this genuine stuff. And the problem is with the Vindolanda tablets, this is the problem, Andy. They don't tell us about the end of the Roman world. However, we don't know that, because there might be stuff there that's buried somewhere else that could be can you imagine this, Andy? There's a letter written by Emperor Honorius at Vindolanda dating to 422, said, how are you boys at Vindolanda? I'm sending you a box of figs. And then suddenly overnight, the Roman army didn't leave because the emperor's just sent you a box of figs. Yeah. That doesn't sound as far-fetched as it sounds, but it is likely, it's possible.
Yep.
I suppose
all these little things change.
All the Roman propaganda is on their statues and pillars, isn't it? All their political news is like on Trajan's column.
But if you're an emperor that people didn't want, you wanted to be taken away from history, right? Then it doesn't take a lot to remove somebody from history, right? We see in our own day and age, without me saying anything.
Yeah.
We look at Top of the Pops, and there was a certain person on lots of episodes of Top of the Pops. So we erase him out of Top of the Pops. Whatever stuff he did, right? He's gone from history, right? So if we can do it, right, then the Romans can do it. All those years ago, there's 2,000 years there's 2,000 years have gone, right? And again, back to what I said at the beginning, right? My obsession with Emperor Caligula actually invading Britain, right? It doesn't take a lot for that to be erased from history, because most of what we know about the invasions of Britain in the 56, 55, and 54 BC, most of the evidence that we've got are written by one single person, Julius Caesar, who was the one who was involved in those invasions, right? If none of those works survived, there was no invasion of Britain in 56, 55, 54 BC. So that's removed from history. That's gone. That didn't happen. Evidence doesn't exist. There's little to no evidence to say that Julius Caesar invaded. There's more evidence in one single burial at Welwyn Garden, with all the stuff at Welwyn Garden of traders, some even buried like a roll. There's more evidence there than the entire the invasions. We're not talking about Julius Caesar. We're talking about AD 43. So then you get to one little bit of history. There's an emperor that's assassinated, like most emperors at that stage. Caligula's assassinated, Claudius assassinated, Nero's assassinated. Then we've got the year of the four emperors, right? You look at this and you start to think, well, there's not too much of a stroke of exaggeration that Caligula may have invaded Britain and it may have been successful. But what we're going to do, we're going to pin it on Claudius a couple of years later, because what we want to do is make sure that Caligula has the damnatio memoriae and his scrub history. Doesn't take a lot. And, you know, I could be completely wrong, but when we do Caligula again, you might think differently. On that note, is there anything else that Judith, Andy, or Margaret wants to say?
No, thank you.
No,
I think you've covered just about everything.
I think we've done quite a lot tonight, to be honest.
You did well.
I did well. Thank you
well.
very much.
10 out of 10.
We did well.
A gold star.
And I'll say to Alex that you liked your images, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Okay then. Well, I'm going to call it Judith. Your books are on the way, and Margaret, Andy, Judith. If there's nothing else you want to say, we'll call it a night.
Okay. See you next week.
Bye all.
See you next week.
Bye,
Night,
bye.
boys and girls.
Bye.
Night. Okay. Chat. Nothing in the chat box. 1. Nothing in the chat box. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nothing in that chat. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Anyway, night, people. We're going now. So, Amorihid, happy Owen Glyndŵr Day. And it's been a long time, hasn't it? 1400 to today, which is 625 years ago. Owen Glyndŵr proclaimed himself an independent prince within Cymru. So I'm off now. So we got tomorrow at 7:10 starting. I get people on at 7, but we don't put this online until 7:10. Anyway, diolch yn fawr I chi. Looking at that window there, and no comments there. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr I chi. Night.